Well, again, this was a tasking from the group in California, and they had read Berglund's book, I believe it was called The Ringmakers of Saturn.
Right.
And I didn't know, I'd never read the book, I didn't know that was what they were looking at that particular time. But they asked me to look at the rings of Saturn with a few specific questions. And I did the project using extended remote viewing, the spontaneous remote viewing. And what I saw were a lot of anomalies in the rings. They asked me, the nature of the rings, and I've written in the book about the specifics. And I didn't get feedback on that until about 2 years ago, when the Cassini probe, which had been sent out from Earth, finally reached the rings of Saturn and was sending back information. And I read an article about the rings and what the Cassini probe had found. And again, I got some confirmation of some of the perceptions that I had about the rings, which were unknown at that time.
Your book was written how long ago?
It was, I think, 98. And I've got a copy here. Yeah, it's actually now out of print, but I do have copies, and you can get copies on Amazon. Yeah, it was 98.
1998.
It's sort of a bit out of date now, and I'd love to rewrite it.
I think that would be a neat project. But I still think that to put what you saw in your remote viewing sessions really bold, right? And very courageous, because your reputation's on the line when you put it in print. Right.
Well, the fact that quite a bit of what I'd perceived has now been validated, so I don't feel it's such a risk now. But I don't know if I told you how the book came about.
No, share with us.
I was working at the Pear Lab at Princeton University, the Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, and I was in one of the bookstores in town, and I was looking for a book that was a little bit autobiographical, a little bit about remote viewing, about psi stuff, a few predictions, some exercises to do remote viewing and altered state work, and I couldn't find anything. And I was looking through the shelves and going, well, where are these books? And I'm thinking, I have to write it. I had that epiphany of, I have to write this book, because I couldn't find the book that I wanted with all of this information in. And I thought, well, if I want this information, I'm sure there are others out there that would like to read this too.
Remember the exercise that we did where you hold an object and tell the story of the object, its history, out of the blue, seemingly?
Right. It's called Psychometry, and it's a well-known skill. Some people are better at it than others, but most people can do it. They can hold an unknown object, and it feels like you're perhaps making it up, but there's information that comes through from that object. It's almost like a trigger for information.
I think that was pretty interesting. Very, very interesting to be able to do. Everybody was able to do it in our course. One of the things I really appreciated, having been your student, was coming into the class from the view that we can do this. It was integral in being able to set the tone for the 5 days. It wasn't just something you said, it's where you come from. You can do this. This is
right.
Totally accessible to you. Where I know there are trainers out there that are transmitting the protocol, but they come from, most of you won't be able to do it, and it'll take years for you to be able to do anything. Mm-hmm. And I think the paradigm of the teacher and the consciousness of the teacher, what they're imparting, not only in the formal transmission of the protocol, but in the meta message, is very important.
Right. I try and stay very positive. I feel that I'm a catalyst for people learning. I try and make my classes very accepting and comfortable, because that's how people learn. They come in, and because a lot of people come to the class going, oh, gosh, fear of failure, and also fear of success. If I get it right the first time, am I going to be expected to get it right all the time? So I try and dispel some of those expectations from the beginning and say, you can do this. I'm not going to expect you to be on all the time, but you will get data.
It is a really different experience to tune in to what you refer to as the signal line, the line by which you are able to feel, sense, talk about, pick up, whatever it is that's being tasked, is not necessarily what we think it is. I think the greatest challenge of this from the student perspective is to not impose on what's coming in. A lot of times what appeared to me to be coming in didn't make sense to me, but just because it didn't make sense to me didn't mean it was wrong. See, that's the whole thing, is getting out of the way of our opinions about what's coming in.
Right. You got to get out of that left brain, I know what this is, attitude, and just let that information come up from the subconscious. Write it down, say it, draw, sketch, model, whatever comes up. Because your subconscious knows what the information is. And you have to get that left brain ego out of the way. And that's partly why the protocol, the CRV protocol, was designed, because it occupies the left brain with writing and saying. So it keeps it busy. And you have to declare every time your left brain goes, oh, I know what it is. It gives you a big picture of something. Then you have to write it down, declare it, and then move on.
The left brain is definitely addicted to figuring it out and naming whatever it thinks it is.
Yeah, and of course that's very simplistic, left-right. We're always using left-right together. But in simplistic terms, the left brain does get in the way very often in intuitive work.
Describe what you consider to be the subconscious and how it works, and why the subconscious is the ground by which the remote viewing protocol is able to happen.
Well, the subconscious is a metaphor. There's no real hard and fast. You can't go and say, okay, look at the brain, look at the mind. This is where the subconscious is. It's it's not something you can dissect out. It's like looking for memory. Where's memory? And it has the same thing about what's love, what's hate. It's a metaphor. But it's part of our consciousness that is able to be non-local. It's not always resident in our head or in our body. It can travel. It can access information. It can be within us and access information. It stores information. It doesn't analyze. It just shoots up the information into consciousness. And there's deductions that we perceive a huge, vast amount of information, and only a small bit of it, small part of it, makes it up into our conscious mind. So we're accessing our environment all the time into our subconscious mind, and then bits and pieces trickle up into our consciousness. So what the protocol does, what remote viewing does, it facilitates accessing information from our subconscious.
One of the greatest ahas experientially in being in your class was the experience of the profound nature of non-locality. I mean, you and I can talk about non-locality, but if I hadn't taken your course, only you will have experienced access to it that you can talk about and recall readily, right? But right. I wouldn't have been able to know what that meant, non-locality. I want to talk about that because there was somebody, I don't know if it was Ingo Swann, felt that it will be the greatest discovery in science that ever was. The concept and the reality of non-locality. Talk about that.
That sounds like Ingo or maybe Russell Targ, that we are not just flesh and blood, physical lumps of meat. We have a spiritual aspect. We have a mental aspect to us. Mind that although the purists, the behaviorists say that it's not non-local, it's just the workings of the mind, the electrical workings of the brain. I've had out-of-body experiences since I was a child, and I write about that in Remote Perceptions. And I proved to myself through discovery and experimentation that I could, in my